Sir, please place your container. On the scanning platform, Customs Officer Thrax chirped nervously, all 6 of their sensory stalks twitching in what humans had learned to recognize as extreme anxiety. The officer's crystalline exoskeleton caught the harsh spaceport lighting, sending rainbow refractions dancing across the inspection booth's walls. Joe Martinez, freelance space station maintenance engineer and self-proclaimed guy who fixes stuff, sighed deeply and hefted his battered red toolbox onto the platform. He'd been through this song and dance before, but something about Thrax's demeanor suggested this particular inspection might be more entertaining than usual. "It's just tools," Joe explained, trying to sound reassuring. "You know, for repairs. I'm here about the life support system in Section 7. Thrax's upper stalks went rigid, never a good sign when dealing with crystalline beings. Tools, they repeated, the universal translator somehow managing to make the word sound like a curse. "Please step back while I perform a level 1 security scan." The scanning beam passed over Joe's toolbox, creating a holographic inventory that floated in the air between them. Thrax's middle stalks began vibrating at a frequency that made Joe's teeth itch. Sir Thrax said, their voice climbing several octaves, "Our systems have detected multiple Class 3 restricted items, including but not limited to an impact-based skull crusher, several monomolecular cutting implements, and, by the sacred lattice, is that a plasma-powered matter disruptor." Joe squinted at the hologram. "You mean my hammer, screwdrivers, and soldering iron?" Hammer Thrax's crystalline form briefly shifted from its usual blue to an alarming shade of puce. "You openly admit to carrying a hammer?" "Yeah," Joe scratched his head. "Look, I've got all my paperwork in order. I'm registered with the Galactic Handyman's Union and everything. Sir, please remain still while I contact my supervisor." Thrax's lower stalks were now drumming an irregular pattern against the floor. "And keep your hands where I can see them. Away from the hammer. It's for hitting nails," Joe offered helpfully. "You know, to attach things to other things." This explanation did not have the calming effect Joe had hoped for. In fact, Thrax's entire crystalline form began to resonate at a frequency that made nearby electronics protest with high-pitched whines. "You use it for hitting things." Thrax's voice had reached a pitch that probably had dogs howling several star systems away. "And these nails, are they some form of primitive projectile weapon?" Joe opened his mouth to explain the basic concepts of carpentry, then thought better of it. Sometimes, he'd learned, it was better to let these things play out naturally. Besides, he was getting paid by the hour. "Look," he tried instead, "I've got a work order right here. The life support system needs maintenance, and I'm going to need my tools to fix it. Unless you prefer everyone on this station to start experiencing that pesky little problem of not having air to breathe." Thrax's sensory stalks all swiveled to focus on him with laser-like intensity. "Are you threatening me with atmospheric deprivation, sir?" "What? No, I'm trying to prevent atmospheric deprivation. That's literally my job." "So you admit this is your occupation? Professional wielder of impact-based weapons?" Joe slumped against the inspection booth's wall, wondering if it was too late to switch careers. Maybe he should have listened to his mother and become a space lawyer instead. At least then he'd only have to deal with the regular kind of nonsense, not whatever this was. "Tell you what," he said, straightening up. "Why don't you call your supervisor? I'll wait right here, being very non-threatening, while you explain to them why the station's life support system isn't getting fixed because you're afraid of a hammer." In retrospect, Joe would later reflect, mentioning the hammer again might not have been his smartest move. Senior Security Officer Plix Delta 9 was having what humans would call a day, not a good day, not a bad day, just a day. That changed approximately 2 minutes after receiving Thrax's emergency alert about a human carrying prohibited weapons of mass destruction. "Let me get this straight," Plix said. "They're bioluminescent spots pulsing with barely contained agitation. The human freely admitted to using an impact-based weapon for hitting things." Thrax's crystal form vibrated in affirmation, and they called it a hammer. Senior officer. They showed no remorse. Joe, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the security office for the past 20 minutes, raised his hand like a student in class. "Can I just point out?" Silence. Plix's spots flashed red. "We're cataloging your arsenal of death, human. Please maintain your non-threatening posture. Two junior security officers were carefully removing items from Joe's toolbox using gravitational manipulation fields, treating each tool like it might spontaneously achieve sentience and attack. Item 1, announced the first officer, whose name tag read Zip Crude Impact Weapon with Enhanced Grip Modification. "That's a rubber handle," Joe muttered under his breath. Item 2 continued Zip, ignoring him. "Collection of monodirectional matter separators in various sizes." Flathead screwdrivers, Joe corrected automatically, then immediately regretted it when every alien in the room flinched. "They're designed for separating matter." Plix's spots went from red to a concerning shade of ultraviolet. "And you have multiple sizes for different types of separation." Item 3, Zip pressed on, now holding up Joe's tape measure with trembling appendages. Retractable metallic ribbon with numerical attack indicators. Joe couldn't help himself. "It's for measuring things." The room went silent. Even the ambient hum of the station seemed to pause for dramatic effect. "Measuring," Plix repeated slowly. "Your victims?" "No, like distances. Lengths. How big things are. So you can determine the optimal attack range of your impact weapon," Thrax suggested helpfully. Joe buried his face in his hands. The life support system's maintenance warning continued to blink on his tablet, completely ignored by everyone except him. Item 4, Zip announced, holding up the pipe wrench. "Adjustable crushing apparatus with serrated gripping surfaces." "For pipes," Joe exclaimed. "It's right there in the name." "The human admits to targeting vital infrastructure," Thrax's crystal form chimed in distress. Plix raised what passed for a hand among their species. "Wait. Are you suggesting that humans routinely carry devices specifically designed to damage essential life support conduits?" "No, it's for fixing them. Look, your life support system is actually failing right now, and I'm the guy who's supposed to." Item 5, Zip interrupted. "Appears to be some form of primitive energy weapon." They held up Joe's flashlight. "Oh, come on. That's just a flashlight. It emits focused beams of radiation," Zip noted clinically. "Yeah, so I can see what I'm fixing." "After using your crushing apparatus to create the damage in the first place," Plix asked, "their spots now cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning disco ball." The second security officer, who had been quietly scanning Joe's work boots, suddenly jerked back. "Senior officer, the human's footwear contains reinforced impact plates." "Steel-toed boots," Joe explained wearily. "For safety." "The human employs armor." Thrax's crystalline form resonated with alarm, and openly admits to engaging in combat. "Combat with what?" Joe asked, genuinely curious about where this logic was heading. "Presumably whatever you're planning to separate matter from," Plix replied grimly. The life support warning on Joe's tablet upgraded itself from maintenance required to critical system failure imminent. He wondered if he should mention this, but given that they had just classified his flashlight as a radiation weapon, he decided to wait until they got to his multi-tool. That ought to be entertaining, at least. Item 6, Zip continued, holding up said multi-tool with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts of mass destruction. "Multiple weapon system with. Are these concealed attachments?" Joe leaned back against the wall and smiled. Sometimes you just had to appreciate the absurdity of life. The life support system chose that moment to emit its first warning siren. Somewhere in the distance, fans began to slow down. The holding cell they put Joe in was really more of a converted storage closet. This made sense, since the station's architects probably hadn't anticipated needing to detain dangerous humans armed with measuring tapes and Phillips head screwdrivers. "For your own safety," Plix had explained while sealing the door, "we'll keep you here until the weapon disposal unit arrives. They're only 3 systems away." "And how long will that take?" Joe asked, trying to sound casual while eyeing the ventilation grate above him. "Oh, no more than 6 standard cycles." Plix's spots glowed with what might have been pride at their efficiency. "You mean 6 days?" Joe watched as another warning light flickered on the life support panel visible through his cell's small window. "While the life support system is failing. We've dispatched our most qualified technical specialist to address the environmental concerns," Plix assured him. Through the window, Joe watched as a maintenance worker who appeared to be made entirely of sentient gas approached the main control panel. They stared at it for approximately 30 seconds, produced what looked suspiciously like a manual, and then proceeded to hold it upside down. "Your technical specialist," Joe said slowly, "doesn't have hands, does they? That's a very manipulatorist attitude, human." The gaseous technician attempted to interface with the control panel, passing right through it several times before giving up and forming themselves into what appeared to be a question mark. Joe sighed and pulled out his backup multi-tool, the one he kept in his boot for emergencies. The security team had been so distracted by his arsenal that they'd missed the most obvious place to check. It was almost embarrassing, really. "Hey, Plix," he called out. "Quick question about your holding cells. Do they happen to be rated for vacuum exposure?" "Of course not. This is a civilian station. Why would you?" Plix's spots suddenly went pale. "Human, what are you planning?" Joe already had the ventilation grate off. "Nothing much. Just thought you should know that when life support fails completely, which by my estimate will be in about 20 minutes, this whole section is going to lose pressure. Hope you've got good insurance." He hauled himself into the ventilation shaft as alarms began blaring throughout the station. Behind him, he could hear Plix shouting something about the human is loose in the environmental systems and it's armed with unknown technology. Joe wasn't sure whether they meant his multi-tool or the knowledge of basic engineering principles. At this point, both seemed to qualify as weapons of mass destruction. Crawling through the station's maintenance tunnels, Joe couldn't help but narrate to himself in his best action movie voice in a world where a tape measure is considered a deadly weapon. One handyman must save an entire station of aliens from their own safety protocols. He paused at a junction to check his tablet's diagnostic readout. The life support system was now operating at 40% capacity and falling. Below him, he could hear security teams rushing around, presumably trying to figure out how to stop him without coming anywhere near his terrifying human tools. Warning, the station's AI announced with remarkable calm. "Life support failure in 15 minutes. Also, there appears to be a dangerous human loose in the ventilation system. Security advises all residents to avoid any contact with maintenance equipment, as humans can weaponize anything." "That's just hurtful," Joe muttered, making his way toward the main environmental control room. "True, but hurtful." He emerged from the ventilation system right next to the main control panel, coming face to face with the gaseous technician who was still trying to figure out how to interact with solid matter. "Hey there," Joe said cheerfully. "Don't suppose you'd like some help?" The technician formed themselves into an exclamation point, then rapidly retreated through the nearest wall. "I'll take that as a yes." Joe turned to the control panel, which was now displaying more red warnings than he'd seen since that incident with the fusion reactor and the coffee maker. He cracked his knuckles dramatically, pulled out his multi-tool, and got to work. "Stop right there," Plix's voice echoed through the corridor. "Step away from the critical systems." Or what Joe called back, not looking up from his repairs. "You'll arrest me for unauthorized life-saving. We don't negotiate with tool users." The environmental systems chose that moment to emit a sound that Joe recognized as the mechanical equivalent of a death rattle. "Well then," he shouted back, "I guess we're all about to experience an exciting lesson in explosive decompression. Anyone here ever wanted to try being a vacuum?" There was a long pause, followed by what sounded like a heated argument in at least 3 different alien languages. "You have 5 minutes," Plix finally announced. "But we're watching you. No sudden movements with that. That multi-tool. Don't say its name." Joe's fingers flew over the control panel as he performed what his alien audience probably perceived as some kind of arcane human weapon ritual. In reality, he was just bypassing a faulty power coupling, but he figured that explaining that would only make things worse. Warning, the station AI announced. "Life support at 25% capacity. Also, the dangerous human appears to be molesting our environmental systems with primitive technologies. Security advises writing your last will and testament." "You know," Joe said to no one in particular, "your AI could really use an attitude adjustment. I know a great programmer who wait, probably shouldn't mention that. Might count as threatening to hack your systems." Plix, who was watching from what they clearly hoped was a safe distance, had assembled what appeared to be an entire committee of security officers. They were all taking extensive notes, probably for whatever passed as an incident report in a situation involving a rogue handyman. The human appears to be communing with the machinery, one officer whispered loudly enough for Joe to hear. Should we consider this a religious ceremony? Don't be ridiculous, another responded. Clearly they're establishing dominance over the inferior technology. It's probably some kind of primitive warrior ritual. Joe resisted the urge to bang his head against the control panel. It's called maintenance, he explained instead. You know, fixing things? Making broken stuff work again? Ring any bells? The assembled alien stared at him blankly. How do you people repair things on this station? Joe asked, genuinely curious despite the crisis at hand. We replace them, Plix stated, as if this was the most obvious thing in the universe. When something stops working, we simply dispose of it and install a new one. Joe blinked. Your entire maintenance strategy is just throwing things away and buying new ones. It's much safer than allowing people to wave deadly implements at delicate machinery. The life support system made another ominous sound, and Joe returned his attention to the repairs. No wonder this place is falling apart. You're probably spending more on replacement parts than the station's worth. Warning, the AI chimed in helpfully. Life support at 15% capacity. The human appears to be criticizing our fiscal policies while simultaneously threatening our infrastructure. Security advises updating your species' last known location for posterity. A new alarm started blaring, this one with a particularly annoying pitch that made Joe's teeth vibrate. He reached into his boot again and pulled out a small roll of duct tape. The reaction was immediate and hysterical. By the sacred lattice, someone screamed. They've produced some kind of adhesive weapon. Is that molecular bonding technology? Another voice shrieked. Those are restricted under 17 different treaties. Actually, Joe grunted, taping down a loose connection. This is just duct tape. Humans have been using it for basic repairs since the 20th century. This somehow made things worse. You mean to tell us Plix's spots were now flashing in patterns that probably violated several safety regulations, that humans have possessed molecular bonding technology for over a century? Warning, the AI interrupted. Life support at 10% capacity. Also, the human is now admitting to long-term possession of restricted materials. Security advises, screaming in terror. Joe finished securing the last connection and started reassembling the control panel. You know what? Yes. Humans have mastered the deadly arts of hitting things with hammers, measuring stuff with tape measures, and fixing things with duct tape. We're basically a warrior race of maintenance people. Fear our ability to repair minor damage instead of replacing entire systems. The silence that followed this declaration was broken only by the sound of several security officers frantically updating their reports. But why? One brave soul finally asked. Why would you choose to repair things? Because Joe said, closing the panel with a satisfying click, sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. Also, we're cheap. The life support system hummed back to life, gauges returning to normal levels as fresh air began circulating through the station again. Joe turned to face his audience, who had collectively backed up several more steps. There, he announced. Fixed. With primitive tools and everything. Nobody died, nothing exploded, and it cost you exactly nothing in replacement parts. You're welcome. Warning, the AI said. Life support systems now operating at optimal levels. However, station records indicate this was achieved through the use of unauthorized maintenance techniques. Security advises immediate therapy sessions for all witnesses. Does your AI always end everything with security advices? Joe asked Plix. Only since we installed the new personality matrix, Plix admitted. We're thinking of replacing it. You know, I could probably fix that too. Just need my toolbox and about an hour of... No. The thing about space stations is that they're constantly breaking down in new and exciting ways. This means that where you find one human repair technician, you'll usually find others. It's like a law of nature, right up there with gravity and the universal tendency of important bolts to roll under heavy machinery. The station's security team learned this lesson the hard way when the colonial repair vessel Bob's Fix-It fleet docked for routine resupply, completely unaware of the ongoing tool-related crisis. Security alert, the AI announced with what sounded suspiciously like glee. Multiple humans detected at docking port 7. Initial scans indicate widespread possession of tools. Plix, who had been in the middle of drafting a 17-page report, titled The Hammer Incident, a case study in human weaponry, looked up in horror. How many? Sensors detect 12 humans, each carrying what appears to be a full loadout of maintenance equipment. Security advises changing your will one last time. The security footage from docking port 7 was being broadcast on every screen in the station. It showed a group of perfectly ordinary human repair technicians, all carrying standard toolboxes, tool belts, and various pieces of diagnostic equipment. To the aliens watching, it must have looked like an invasion force. They're heavily armed, someone shouted. Look, that one has some kind of extended reaching device. That's a grabber tool, Joe explained wearily. For reaching things in tight spaces. A grabbing weapon. The footage showed one of the newly arrived humans casually using a power drill to remove a panel near the airlock. Several aliens fainted. Their dismantling the station plexus spots were now strobing like a rave party. This is it. The human maintenance apocalypse has begun. Joe watched as the security footage documented what had to be the most mundane invasion in galactic history. One human was using a level to check some alignment issues. Another was measuring a doorway with a laser distance finder. A third was making notes on a tablet while eating a sandwich. Warning, the AI announced. Humans are now consuming organic matter while simultaneously operating measurement devices. Security advises updating your emergency contacts. That's Steve, Joe noted, pointing at the sandwich-eating technician. He never waits for lunch break. Not actually a violation of any galactic treaties, by the way. They have named, someone whispered in horror. The footage showed another human pulling out a large pipe wrench, causing several security officers to clutch their equivalent of pearls. The grabbing weapon has evolved, Thrax, who had apparently recovered enough to rejoin the crisis, chimed in. It's now capable of rotating things. Yeah, that's kind of the point, Joe muttered. The humans on screen, completely oblivious to the panic they were causing, continued going about their business. One of them started using a socket set, methodically working their way through different sizes to find the right fit. They're probing the station's weaknesses with variations of the rotating weapon. Actually, Joe tried explaining, they're just trying to figure out what size. They're relearning our secrets. The security footage then caught something that would probably end up classified as a galactic incident. One of the humans looked straight at a camera and waved, with a wrench still in hand. It's taunting us with its maintenance capabilities. Plix was practically vibrating. Quick, someone checked the treaties. Is waving tools considered an act of war? Another human on screen pulled out a tablet and started running diagnostics, which somehow made things even worse. They're hacking our systems with their primitive technology. That's just a diagnostic scan, Joe sighed. Standard procedure for. They readmitting to system infiltration. The footage showed one final, devastating scene, a human teaching another human how to properly use a torque wrench. By the sacred lattice, Thrax whispered. They're training reinforcements. Right in front of us. A knowledge transfer of weapon techniques in progress, someone added helpfully. Joe watched as the security team descended into chaos, trying to figure out how to respond to what they genuinely seemed to believe was some kind of maintenance-based invasion. He considered trying to explain the concept of apprenticeship, but decided that might actually cause a diplomatic incident. Warning, the AI announced. Multiple instances of tool usage detected throughout the station. Humans appear to be engaging in widespread repair activities, security advises. Actually, security appears to be hiding in the break room. Please leave a message after the screen. The great tool crisis of Station 47 billion ended not with a bang, but with a collective realization that humans had been fixing things across the galaxy for decades and somehow hadn't managed to destroy civilization with their hammers yet. It helped that during the security team's strategic retreat to the break room, the station's coffee maker had broken down. This created what negotiators would later call a perfect storm of necessity versus paranoia. So, let me get this straight, Plix said, staring longingly at the defunct coffee maker. You're saying you could fix this right now? Without replacing the entire unit? Joe nodded. Simple repair. Probably just a loose connection. 2 minutes with a screwdriver, tops. The matter separator, Plix's spots, pulsed nervously. Screwdriver, Joe corrected firmly. And yes, Though I have to warn you, I might also need to use the deadly arts of electrical tape. The security team huddled together, having what appeared to be an intense debate conducted entirely through color changes and interpretive dance. Finally, Plix turned back to Joe. The committee has decided, they announced gravely, that in light of the current caffeine emergency, we are willing to temporarily reclassify certain human tools as maintenance implements. How generous of you. Under strict supervision, of course. Of course. What followed was possibly the most closely monitored coffee maker repair in galactic history. 12 security officers, 4 safety inspectors, and 1 very interested potted plant watched as Joe performed the mystical human ritual of checking the power cord. Fascinating, someone whispered as Joe expertly wielded his screwdriver. The human appears to be rotating the matter separator in a counterclockwise direction. Note how they test the connection before applying power, another observed. Almost as if they don't want to die in a catastrophic explosion. Most peculiar behavior for a supposedly violent species. The coffee maker hummed back to life. The assembled crowd gasped. Warning, the AI chimed in. Coffee maker now operating at optimal levels through use of unauthorized maintenance techniques. Security advises. Actually, security requests a double espresso, no sugar. Within hours, word spread throughout the station that humans might be less interested in destroying things with their tools than in keeping them running. This radical notion was helped along by the fact that the repair team from Bob's Fix-It fleet had, by this point, resolved 16 different maintenance issues, installed 3 system upgrades, and shown 2 fascinated alien engineers how to properly use a socket wrench. I don't understand, Thrax admitted, watching a human explain the concept of preventative maintenance to an audience of increasingly interested aliens. If your species is advanced enough to achieve faster than light travel, why do you still use such primitive repair methods? Because they work, Joe replied simply. Sure, we could probably design some fancy automated system to do basic repairs. But sometimes you just need to hit something with a hammer. Please don't say that word. Sorry. Sometimes you need to apply percussive maintenance with an impact-based adjustment tool. Much better. Thus, the station's new official policy on human maintenance activities was rushed through in record time, consisting primarily of the phrase, "Just let them fix it," repeated in 17 different languages. There were some conditions, of course. All human tools had to be registered, properly labeled, and stored in designated areas. Humans were required to announce their repair intentions before beginning work. And most importantly, they had to stop referring to their equipment by what Plix called those horrible Earth names. Thus, hammers became impact-based adjustment tools, screwdrivers were officially rotational matter manipulators, the Humble tape measure was classified as a distance quantification apparatus, and duct tape, after much debate, was designated as emergency molecular bonding strips, which honestly made it sound much more impressive than it was. Warning, the AI announced one morning, several weeks after the crisis. Human maintenance activities in progress in Section 12. Security advises. Actually, security would like to sign up for next week's basic repair class. Also, the backup generator is making that funny noise again. The final sign that things had changed came when Thrax signed up for a DI basic maintenance course. Their first attempt at using a hammer, an impact-based adjustment tool, resulted in 3 dented panels, 3 broken crystalline appendages, and 1 very proud instructor. You know, Thrax said while filling out the incident report, I think I'm starting to understand why humans enjoy this so much. It's actually quite satisfying. Just wait until you try a power drill, Joe replied, then quickly added, I mean, a rotational force application device. Warning, the AI interjected. Human detected sharing maintenance knowledge with non-human species. Security advises. Security is currently in maintenance training and we'll get back to you later. Have a nice day. And so, life on Station 47 billion returned to normal. Well, a new normal. One where humans were still regarded with mild suspicion, but also with a grudging respect for their ability to keep things running with nothing more than a toolbox full of supposedly primitive weapons. As Joe liked to say, sometimes the best solution is the simple solution he had that printed on t-shirts. They sold surprisingly well.